Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch when she said it. Barron might not be Trump's son, but the real shock came when sealed court documents started. Backing her up, you could feel it through the screen. Something was building. The House Oversight Committee hearing on presidential overreach had already run an hour behind schedule. Most viewers weren't even paying attention until Rep. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, removed her glasses, and asked for silence, not from the room, but from the noise. Of tradition, her tone didn't rise, it lowered, which somehow made everything louder. I want to shift this discussion to something that speaks directly to character. She began staring down the panel, like she already knew the fire she was about to light. Some committee members shifted in their seats. Chairperson Reuben Geller looked visibly tense. Crockett wasn't on script anymore, not the agreed one anyway. This country has spent years protecting power over truth, and that stops today. A few scoffs, a couple of raised eyebrows, but she kept going, methodical, measured. There's a set of sealed documents, originating from an Arizona court in 2019, documents protected under legal maneuvering, and more importantly buried by political influence. Those files involved then-President Trump. Former staffer and a child now silenced did hit the room. I have a sworn affidavit from a federal contractor. She handled digital shredding of files flagged under the White House Correspondence Protection Act. One file was different. It referenced a payment of $3, $1 million to a woman under the alias TB. The only non-redacted phrase. She paused, flipping to a photocopy. The camera zoomed in. Paternity agreement enforced under non-disclosure. DNA confirmation pending. Rep. Roll. Matt Overby tried to interrupt. Is this really the time? But Crockett didn't blink. The people didn't vote for secrecy. They voted for representation. If the president knew during his first term that Barron Trump was not biologically his, and buried that information to protect his image, we have a problem that's not just legal, it's moral now. It wasn't just a hearing, it was national combustion. CNN cut to it. Live, MSNBC, followed. Even Fox didn't switch away. Phones in pockets across the country lit up like warning lights. TikTok clips spread within minutes, each one captioned with the same sentence. Did Jasmine just say Barron isn't Trump's son? Back inside the chamber, murmurs turned into chaos. Overby slammed his pen down and motioned to adjourn. Crockett raised her voice for the first time. We will not silence the truth because it makes the powerful uncomfortable. I'm not talking about gossip, we're talking about justice. Manipulated for personal protection. Repellent. Eleanor Vance tried to pivot, muttering, "Let's keep the child out of this." Crockett cut back. You want to protect a child? Then stop using him as a prop for power. The room exploded. Mics went hot. The House feed cut unexpectedly for over 3 minutes. People watching thought it was a technical glitch until someone leaked the raw feed online. Trump's name was censored twice. The file Jasmine referenced flagged under Homeland Security review hours later, but the damage had already spread. That evening, network ratings broke. Records newsroom scrambled to verify the identity behind TV. Crocker, meanwhile, didn't retreat when asked by a journalist in the hallway whether she feared backlash. Her answer was as cold as it was clear. No, because I didn't say anything. I can't back up. The hearing resumed 22 minutes later, but nothing meaningful continued. The room wasn't debating anymore. It was scrambling. Some staffers wouldn't make eye contact with her. Others simply left the building. But what no one saw, not on C-SPAN or the headlines, was that Crockett had gotten a text on her private phone just as she walked back into her office. One word, finally. But while the hearing fell quiet, the White House was anything but inside the West Wing. A junior staffer had just dropped her iced coffee all over a printer, but nobody noticed. All eyes were locked on the muted TV bolted to the corner of the Roosevelt room. Jasmine Crockett was still mid-sentence, and the silence in the room wasn't just about the broadcast, it was about what they knew might come next. Across the hall, Chief of Staff Brian Halford stood frozen in front of the screen. He wasn't blinking. The president had just left a trade meeting and was walking toward them, half-focused, waving off an aide rambling about agricultural tariffs in Kansas. Then he saw Crockett's face on the screen. "What's this?" Trump asked, motioning toward the TV as he stepped in. "Why is this on every channel?" No one responded fast enough. Trump turned to Halford. "Brian, what the hell is going on?" Halford opened his mouth, then closed it again. "Sir." She brought up sealed files about Barron. Trump's face froze in that half-open scowl he got when he wasn't sure whether to laugh or throw something. She What the room held its breath, someone cleared their throat. In the corner, another aide slowly reached for the remote. Don't touch that, Trump snapped. He walked to the TV, eyes narrowing just as Crockett dropped the word paternity. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then Trump wheeled around and barked. Get me the network right now. Put me on the phone with what's-his-name Peterson at CNN. Now an intern sprinted to make the call. Halford stepped forward cautiously. Sir, we might need to be strategic about how we strategic, Trump growled. She just said, Barron's not my son on live television, and you want strategy. He snatched his phone off the table and called Hope Sinclair, his personal legal counsel, on speaker. You can't say that. That's slander. I want a statement. We sue her. We sue CNN. We sue. Everyone, Hope answered, voice calm as ever. Sir, defamation doesn't hold if it turns out to be true. Are you telling me she has nothing? Trump's silence gave the whole room its answer. Halford stepped in. We don't know what she has, but we do know this. It's already out. Every outlet's picked it up. Not a son is trending. TikTok's got clips from 4 different THN's angles. Trump's hand was shaking. He wasn't even trying to hide it. He turned the volume back up just in time to catch Crockett's final statement. If the president knew during his first term that Barron Trump was not biologically his and buried that information to protect his image, we have a problem that's not just legal, it's moral. Trump flung the remote against the wall. It shattered. This is all because of that stupid agreement, he muttered. Now Halford knew. There was an agreement. How long have you known? He asked, voice low, almost human. Trump didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Marjorie Klein, one of his longest-serving advisors. Get Melania on the phone, sir. She's in Europe. Then wake her up. Klein hesitated. Do you really want to call my wife? As Klein stepped out. Trump sat heavily into the leather chair at the end of the conference table, staring at the fragments of the remote. On the floor, you think she's bluffing? He asked the room. Voice quieter, no one responded. Sinclair finally broke the silence. The NDA is binding, but if Crockett got access to that affidavit, then someone inside leaked, probably from the digital records. Office, we need to isolate that leak fast, and we need to prep Barron. That last word made Trump flinch. He hadn't even said his son's name. Leave him out of this, he muttered. But the press won't. Sinclair replied. Halford sat down across from him. If we don't control the next 24 hours, this becomes the election. You know that, right? Trump nodded slightly, but he wasn't hearing strategy anymore. He was somewhere else. Somewhere darker. Somewhere that smelled like a hotel room in D.C. in 2005. And a crying woman who'd signed her name next to an X back then. He just wanted to win. A woman came forward. He paid it and went away until now. Tell the networks. I'm going live in 30 minutes, he said, sir. I said 30, but before the cameras could even warm up. Twitter had already crowned Jasmine Crockett the voice of the moment in a gas station parking lot outside Dayton, Ohio. 42-year-old Lorna Peake had just finished filling her tank when she glanced at her phone and saw a push alert from the AP reference. To Jasmine Crockett raises explosive allegation about President Trump's marriage live on air. She didn't normally click headlines like that, but something about this one, something about how calm Crockett had looked, made her stop mid-scroll. She hit play. The grainy clip started buffering inside. The store, the cashier had it up to CNN blaring from a small flat screen behind the cigarette display by the time Crockett reached the word paternity. Lorna's breath caught back in Seattle. 19-year-old Denzel Yates was watching from the break room. At the Apple store where Hugh worked, his coworker Dana paused mid-bite of her leftover Thai food. Wait, is she saying Trump's not the dad? She didn't say it? Denzel replied she showed it. Clips were now all over TikTok. The original live stream had over 2.3 million views in under an hour. One slowed-down version highlighted Crockett's hand gripping the affidavit. Another cut to Trump's stunned face from an older Raleigh. Dubbed in for drama by 4 p.m. The hashtag not his son was no. One worldwide on Twitter right under it, hashtag Crockett truth across the country. Everyone had a different theory in a high school cafeteria in Mesa, Arizona. A junior named Joaquin was arguing with his history teacher. Does this even matter? He asked. It's his personal life, his teacher, Mrs. Roach, shook her head. If the documents are real, it's not just personal, it's deception tied to public trust. You cover up something this big, you don't stop at that. In rural Pennsylvania, a retired Marine named Cal was watching Fox News in his den. The anchor looked nervous. The network hadn't cut away yet, but the tone was softening. Even here in one of Trump's strongest bases, questions were bubbling up. What if it's true, his wife Teresa whispered. Cal didn't answer outside of a barbershop in Tallahassee. Phones were being passed around. One man in a Raptors jersey asked, "Y'all think she made it?" Up, the barber shook his head. Slowly, "Nah, that woman ain't flinching. You saw her face. She's been sitting on this within hours." Opinion polls shifted. A flash survey by Data Pulse asked, "Do you believe Jasmine Crockett's claim about President Trump?" And Barron Trump? Yes, 48%, number 33%, unsure 19%. For a country known for polarization, that was a landslide. CNN replayed the footage every hour. MSNBC brought on legal analysts. Even Newsmax had to acknowledge the noise, although they tried to spin it as a political ambush, but on TikTok and Instagram. Crockett's image was being rebranded in real time. Edits showed her face spliced with Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Shirley Chisholm. One post simply read, "She said it on camera in front of everyone," and didn't. Blink. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's live stream was delayed twice backstage. His team argued over the optics. Would acknowledging the allegation make it worse? Would ignoring it look weak? His press secretary released a bland, pre-written statement accusing Republican Crocker of reckless character assassination, but even that barely made a ripple, because by now, attention wasn't just on the claim, it was on why she chose to say it now. Some said it was calculated. Others said it was impulsive, but the real conversation wasn't about timing, it was about truth in a podcast recorded that night in Milwaukee. Two college seniors unpacked the whole thing for their Gen Z listeners. "Look," said the host Bianca. "Ford, if she's lying, she's cooked, but if she's not lying, that means the President of the United States used his power to hide a child's identity from the public for years. That's not gossip. That's corruption." Calls started flooding into radio shows. Grandparents debated it at kitchen tables. Teenagers filmed reactions in car rides. Some called it brave, some called it disgusting, some just couldn't stop replaying it. And yet, through it all, Jasmine Crockett didn't issue a follow-up. No press release, no press conference. Just a single tweet posted at 8:12 p.m. Truth has a way of surfacing when it's ready. But if she was calm, the White House was anything but, and the panic was about to spill into the public eye. It was almost 9:30 p.m. when Jasmine Crockett walked into the CNN studio in downtown D.C. She looked like she hadn't slept, but also like sleep could wait. No entourage, no flashy jewelry, just a navy blue blazer, a clean ponytail, and a folder clutched under her arm inside the studio. The producers were scrambling. This wasn't supposed to be a live night, but ratings were through the roof, and Anderson Pike was already seated checking last-minute notes with the urgency of someone about to host the most-watched interview of the year. "Congresswoman Crocker," he said as she entered, rising with a stiff smile. "We appreciate you making time." She nodded. "Calm, I won't be long. I just want to be clear, when they went live, there was no music intro, no clever transition, just her face-centered eyes steady." Pike tried to ease in. "You caused a political earthquake today. Congresswoman, some say you crossed a line, others say you revealed what many were too afraid to touch. Can you explain why today was the day?" Crockett took a beat. "Because I wasn't elected to protect a man's secrets," she said. "I was elected to protect the people's right to truth, even when that truth makes them uncomfortable." Pike glanced down at his notes. "You mentioned sealed documents and an alleged payment connected to Barron Trump's birth. Are you in possession of those files?" "I've seen them," she answered. "I have access through a whistleblower who's requested anonymity for obvious reasons. I'm working with legal counsel to determine what can be made public without jeopardizing their safety. And to be clear," Pike continued carefully, "you are stating on national television that you believe President Trump knowingly suppressed the truth about Barron's paternity to protect his public image." Crockett leaned forward. "I'm stating that all evidence I've reviewed strongly supports that conclusion. I'm also stating that his administration used the machinery of government, NDA threats, legal maneuvering, and hush money to keep it buried." Backstage producers were furiously monitoring social feeds. The network's app was crashing from traffic. They hadn't seen numbers like this since election night in 2020. Pike looked visibly tense. "You know the implications of this, Congresswoman." "If you're wrong, I'm not," she interrupted silence. He tried to pivot. "Many critics say this brings a child into public crossfire, that it's unfair to Barron Trump." Crockett nodded solemnly. "I agree it is unfair, But it's not me who put him there that's on his father when you lie to the country to keep your house in order. It's your roof that collapses, not mine. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to pike pressed. Again, do you think this revelation changes the course of the election? No, she said. I think it changes how we look at character, and that's more important back at the White House. Trump's media team was livid. They hadn't expected her to go live so soon, and they certainly hadn't expected her to sound like that, measured, controlled. Unflinching, she wasn't spiraling, she wasn't guessing. She looked like someone who knew a lot more, and she was saying that scared them. The CNN clip was uploaded. Within minutes, in less than an hour, it had over 12 million views. Journalists from the Baltimore Ledger tweeted whether you believe her or not. Jasmine Crockett came to the fight with receipts and a straight spine. This wasn't a leak, this was a warning. By midnight, other representatives were being asked where they stood. Half refused comment, a few tried to sidestep, but one. Rep. Lynette O'Connor from Oregon surprised everyone. I've seen parts of what Rep. Crockett referred to, O'Connor told a local news anchor, and I believe she's telling the truth. That, quote, set off another explosion online, because now it wasn't just Jasmine. Someone else had seen it too, meanwhile. Crockett had returned to her apartment in Arlington. She didn't answer. Any more calls? Didn't refresh Twitter. She just sat on her couch, shoes still on, staring at the folder across from her. Inside were the rest of the documents, some she hadn't mentioned yet. Some she hoped she'd never have to, but if pushed, she was ready. But while Jasmine sat in silence, the woman at the heart of the story was being forced into the spotlight she never wanted at a quiet. A corner of El Sereno, California, 51-year-old Genevieve Larson pulled into her driveway just after 6 a.m., still wearing the blue scrubs from her overnight nursing shift. She hadn't even turned off the ignition before her neighbor came running up. The path phone in hand. You need to see this, she said, breathless. Genevieve squinted at the screen. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Just a clip of Jasmine Crockett sitting straight-backed in a studio, her voice sharp, calm. Woman under the alias TB. Genevieve's chest tightened. That alias wasn't random. It was her. Atalia Breyer, the name she used in court, buried under a protective order she had hoped would never resurface, and now it was. National inside her house. Genevieve locked the door, drew the blinds, and powered on the burner phone she kept hidden inside an old coffee tin under the sink. It hadn't rung in over 4 years, but this morning, for missed calls, one voicemail, the voice she heard was her lawyer. Genevieve, I know you've seen it. Do not answer anything. I'm on the next flight. We knew this day might come. Just sit tight. Her hands trembled as she sat down at the kitchen table. That the silence around her was loud. Her son was away at college, and for the first time in years she wished he wasn't, not because she needed protection, but because she didn't want to face this alone by noon. Her name hadn't surfaced, but the vultures were circling. Paparazzi were parked 2 blocks down. Someone tried to pose as a delivery driver. Another slid a note under her garage door. We know who you are. Talk to us first. Name your price. She didn't respond, not yet. Her mind drifted back to 2005, to the hotel suite in Phoenix, where it had all started. She was a surgical tech, then young, ambitious, still believing in second chances. She met Trump at a benefit dinner through a friend of a friend. He wasn't charming, not really, but he was persuasive, confident. He made you feel like saying no would be the biggest mistake of your life. 8 months later, she had a baby and a secret that could destroy everything she told him. At first, he brushed her off. I'm not the guy, he said, smirking. Then came the lawyers. Then the agreement. He never signed the birth certificate, but he did sign the check and the NDA. Genevieve used the money to start fresh. New city, new name, new life. It had almost worked until Jasmine Crockett said her name without saying her name. Across the country, Crockett's team had already reached out. A secure line, no pressure, just a heads up. Reporters were digging. Someone from a DC outlet had already narrowed it down to 5 women. They were all getting calls, and Genevieve knew it was only a matter of time. Her lawyer, Harris Noland, landed in Oakland by mid-afternoon and went straight to her home. They're going to try to break you, he said, sitting across from her at the same kitchen table where she used to pack school lunches. I know, she said softly, but you don't owe them anything. She met his eyes. But I owe her something, Crockett. He nodded. Genevieve stood, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out a red folder inside copies of the original court filing emails from Trump's legal team, proof of the paternity test request that he never answered. "I don't want to go on TV," she said. "I don't want interviews. I just want the truth to be known." Harris studied her. "Then we do it on your terms. Written statement through the Ledger or the Guardian somewhere that won't twist it?" She nodded. "And I want them to know I didn't ask for this, but I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen by nightfall." Genevieve's name still hadn't broken, but the right people now knew exactly who she was. A Washington Post journalist sent a request for comment. At 7:02 p.m., 10 minutes later, a second message came in. "We know you're the woman Jasmine was referring to. I'd like to hear your side before someone else writes it for you." Genevieve closed her laptop. Tomorrow she would decide, but just as she found her voice again, a veteran journalist halfway across the country was about to stumble onto a trail that no one else had noticed yet in a cramped newsroom. In downtown St. Louis, veteran journalist Conrad Wells stared at his monitor, blinking against the harsh blue light. He wasn't young, wasn't flashy, and definitely wasn't part of the online crowd chasing viral headlines. But when the Crockett story broke, something tugged at him, not the drama. He'd seen enough of that. It was the silence between the noise, the parts no one was chasing. He leaned back in his squeaky chair, cracked his knuckles, and opened a folder on his desktop labeled NDA Pattern 217. Conrad had covered Trump for years, but not like cable news did. He watched patterns, payments, real estate filings, offshore trusts. After Crockett's statement, he remembered something odd he'd flagged 5 years ago, a wire transfer from a Trump-linked shell company to an Arizona-based LLC named Red Lantern Diagnostics. No one had cared back then. It was small, buried in a quarterly report, but now he typed fast. Red Lantern Diagnostics, Arizona Paternity Medical Testing Court Filings 219. A public court record popped up from Maricopa County. Most of it was sealed, but the docket showed a motion filed under the initials T, complaint, and a notice of private resolution. Conrad sat up straighter. He called in a favor from an old courthouse clerk who owed him to 30 minutes later. She whispered over the line. There was an affidavit attached, sealed within 3 hours of filing. You're not the first to ask about it today. Who else? He asked. She paused. Lawyers, private ones, not press. He wrote that down by now. Crockett's team had gone quiet. Strategic, smart. But that didn't mean he couldn't find the edges. He called a contact at a medical courier service based in Tempe. They used to work with private labs back in 2019. One of their drivers logged a pickup from an address that matched Red Lantern Diagnostics, destination DC, overnight the sender Genevieve Larson. There it was. He didn't publish it, not yet, but he knew now. Crockett hadn't thrown out a theory. She had a foundation and possibly the documents to match. By the end of the day, Conrad had a name, a timeline, a money trail, and an angle. No other outlet. Had he emailed Crockett's office directly? No fancy language, just a single line. I know about Red Lantern. If this is real, it's about more than scandal. It's about systemic abuse of power. Not looking to be first, I'm looking to be right. An hour later, he received a reply. We are listening. It was short, but it told him enough. They weren't scrambling. They were preparing still. The truth wasn't just in D.C. He started pulling FEC records, checking for legal reimbursements filed under consulting or discretionary services. He found 3 instances, all in mid-2020, tagged under legal risk mitigation. 2 were linked to familiar firms. The third, a small Arizona firm called G. Noland and Associates, Genevieve's lawyer. It all fit at 10:17 p.m. Conrad sat down at his desk, cracked open a lukewarm can of Dr. Pepper, and started writing the first draft of what would become the most read article of his career. He didn't lead with the child. He didn't lead with the money. He led with the silence. In a democracy's secrets rot us from the inside. This isn't about scandal. It's about a government machinery built to bury the people it fears. He filed it under embargo, waiting for clearance from legal, but he knew deep down the dam was cracking. What Crockett had started wasn't a stunt, it was a spark, and by morning the fuse would burn straight through every newsroom in the country. But just as Conrad prepared to publish, the White House was struggling to keep its inner circle from turning against itself, and things were about to get even messier. By 7 a.m., the West Wing was crawling with Damage control legal aides rushed between rooms, phones glued to their ears. Staffers were pulling overnight shifts, some too nervous to even change clothes. The press office whiteboard had been wiped clean, then filled again, then wiped clean once. No one knew which strategy would hold for more than 10 minutes. President Trump hadn't spoken publicly since Crockett's hearing, but inside the walls of 16 Pennsylvania Avenue, he was anything but quiet in the Roosevelt room. He paced in a threadbare red tie, hair slightly unkempt, barking into a speakerphone, "Find out who that woman is, the one Crockett's talking about. I want her full record, schoolwork, everything." An aide replied from the other end of the line, "Sir, we believe her name is Genevieve Larkinson. She changed her legal name in 2010. There's a sealed court filing." "I don't care about the court," Trump snapped. I care about the story we find her. We discredit her hopes." And Claire, his legal counsel, exchanged a look with Brian Halford across the room. Even they were starting to wonder whether this situation could be contained, because it wasn't just about one woman anymore. It was about the machine built to protect the illusion behind closed doors, the communications. The team was falling apart. A young speechwriter had broken down crying after getting screamed at by Sinclair for suggesting they admit a minor lapse in judgment. Another aide spilled coffee on her notes while printing a prepared statement that never got read. No one knew who was making final decisions anymore. Trump changed his mind every hour, and then came the leak at 8 a.m. A clip surfaced on a private news Discord server, then landed on Reddit. Within minutes, it was audio muffled but unmistakable. Hope Sinclair's voice. "If the affidavit leaks, we are exposed. We can't explain away a paternity avoidance." The DNA order wasn't ignored, it was dodged. The clip spread like wildfire. Cable anchors scrambled to vet it. It was raw, unverified, but the voice analysts matched it to public footage within an hour. The timeline matched to St. Clair was cornered in a hallway by a Fox reporter later that morning. She didn't deny the voice, just kept walking inside the Oval Office. Trump was spiraling. "She recorded me," he muttered. "No, sir," Halford replied. Quietly, "She recorded herself, probably on a call." "Same thing," he barked. Alfred didn't answer at 10 a.m. Trump met privately with First Lady Melania Trump via secure video call. She was still in Geneva attending a youth wellness summit. Her face was composed but distant. "You said it was handled," she said softly. "It was handled," he replied, "until that woman came back." Melania didn't flinch. "You should have told me the full story, not pieces." Trump's voice dropped. "This doesn't have to change anything. Barron is still our son." She blinked, lips pressed tight. "No, Donald. He's my son." The call ended shortly after. Back at the press room, reporters were circling like sharks. Questions kept coming. Has the president seen the affidavit Jasmine Crockett referenced? Was there a DNA test submitted by Donald Trump in 2019? Did the administration suppress court filings through internal influence? The press secretary tried to hold the line with a pre-written statement. The president firmly denies any and all false claims regarding his family and views these attacks as a disgraceful attempt to score political points. It didn't work, because now even insiders were talking. A mid-level staffer anonymously told the Philadelphia Review, "We've known about the Red File since 2020. It was kept in the top right drawer of Helfer's cabinet. Anyone who asked about it was told to focus on the campaign." When the article dropped at noon, Twitter caught fire again. People weren't just reacting, they were choosing sides, even in conservative circles. Quiet conversations started bubbling up. Republican strategist Janelle Christian went on record with PBS saying, "This isn't about party anymore. This is about power being protected with lies. If Crockett's claims hold water, we need to face it head-on inside the White House." The circle of trust kept shrinking. Sinclair was already drafting a resignation letter. Halford had stopped answering press calls altogether. The only person still trying to hold it together was Trump himself, and even he was showing cracks. He barked orders, demanded loyalty. But now people didn't just nod. They hesitated because the truth had started to drip, and there was no way to glue it back inside the cracks. But the biggest crack wasn't in the walls of the White House. It was buried in a judge's drawer in Phoenix, and the record inside was about to surface. 2 floors below street level, inside the dusty basement archives of the Maricopa County Family Court building in Phoenix, Judge Rosanna Vitelli sat staring at an envelope she hadn't touched in over 5 years. It was labeled confidential, sealed by order case TB versus JDT. She still remembered the day it arrived, the rushed filing, the frantic clerk, the unusual call from a senior federal judge urging her to keep the matter quiet and sealed for national security concerns. At the time it sounded absurd, but the pressure was real, the signature on the memo. Then Attorney General Jerome BOMBSHELL didn't ask questions. Judges learned early on how to read between the lines, but it stayed with her like a splinter. And now Jasmine Crockett had made a public judge. Vitarelli slowly ran her thumb over the edge of the envelope. She was 67 now. Weeks from retirement, she presided over thousands of cases, custody fights, name changes, protection orders, but this one haunted her because it never had an ending. Inside was the original paternity motion signed by Genevieve Larson under her alias Talia Bree. There were 5 attachments. One was a DNA request order issued by the court and stamped for service to Donald J. Trump. The others were responses from Trump's legal team, all requesting extensions, all citing scheduling conflicts, and finally a motion to dismiss based on extraordinary executive obligations. But what there wasn't was a DNA result. The test never happened. Judge Vitale picked up the phone and dialed her former clerk, now a civil rights lawyer in Flagstaff. "You see what's happening on TV?" she asked. "Hard to miss," the voice replied. "Remember that? Case from 2019, the one I told you about over drinks once you kept that sealed. I still have it. Silence. "You thinking of unsealing?" Judge Vitarelli took a breath. "I'm thinking about what I should have done back then before the pressure got to me elsewhere in Phoenix." A different story was breaking. An anonymous source leaked an internal court memo to the Arizona Sentinel, one that revealed Trump's legal team filed a protective objection to prevent any DNA sample from being submitted. The memo was technical, but one paragraph stood out. Client explicitly refuses. Biological Test Council advises alternate resolution terms, suggested private financial settlement. Media gag clause, immediate sealing. It matched the story Crockett told almost word for word. Back in D.C., when the Sentinel article hit the wire, CNN interrupted a live panel discussion mid-sentence. Anderson Pike sat stunned as his producer whispered the update. Through his earpiece, "Repeat that," he asked on air. The voice came through again. The Arizona judge had a DNA request. Trump refused. The test never happened. The panelists fell silent. "That means..." Pike said slowly, "There's no biological confirmation, no denial either, just avoidance within minutes." No. DNA was trending. People didn't need to understand legal jargon. They understood avoidance, and it stung at the White House. The walls trembled again. Hopes and Claire was gone. Brian Halford was locked in a room with the president, trying to explain how a 5-year-old memo from a small court in Arizona had now become national front-page material. Trump wasn't yelling anymore. He was quiet, too quiet. "How did they get that memo?" he asked, staring blankly at the floor. "They didn't," Halford answered. "Someone leaked it." The clerk. "A lawyer, maybe," the judge. Trump grunted. "She promised to keep it sealed." Halford didn't remind him that promises meant little when truth was staring a judge down in her last weeks on the bench. Across the country, the mood was shifting. This wasn't some far-off scandal anymore. This was messy, human, and painfully real. People started asking, if he had nothing to hide, why not just take the test in a hair salon in Tulsa? A woman getting her braids touched up muttered, "It's always the lies that get them, not the act." The lies in Minneapolis, a college student tweeted. "I don't care who the father is. I care that the president used the court system like a personal broom closet." Even some conservative voices were starting to crack. A retired GOP strategist said on live radio, "I'm not saying it's true, but the way they're dancing around it, it doesn't look good." The silence is louder than the accusation. Meanwhile, Judge Vitarelli made one last call to Jasmine Crockett's office. No voicemail, no assistant. She was transferred straight to the Congresswoman Crockett. The judge said, "This is Rosanna Vitelli. I have something you might want to see." But while Crockett readied for what came next, Americans from coast to coast were preparing to choose sides, not just politically but morally. By the time the Arizona court memo was read live on Good Morning America, the country wasn't watching the news anymore. It was living it in a diner in Des Moines, Iowa. The usual morning chatter about weather and corn futures was replaced with sharp arguments over truth, loyalty, and what it meant to be lied to by the most powerful man in the nation. 2 booths apart, An elderly couple argued with a younger man in a Carhartt hoodie. "I don't care who fathered that boy," the older man muttered, stirring his coffee. "This smells." Like a smear job, the younger man leaned forward. "You really believe he didn't block the test? There's proof-sealed files, NDAs. The whole mess." He ran from the truth just like he runs from everything else down south in Mobile, Alabama. A church parking lot turned into a makeshift debate stage. Pastor Carl Denson had just finished morning prayer when his phone buzzed with a message from a deacon. "Turn on the TV." When he did, Crockett's face filled the screen again. This time she was walking up the Capitol steps, flanked by two aides and holding a plain manila folder. By 10 a.m., the Washington Ledger reported that a federal request had been submitted to unseal additional documents referenced by Crockett's team. The language in the motion was surgical. "The matter now falls under national interest. Suppression of truth under pretense of executive privilege constitutes a breach of ethical governance." The response from voters came fast. Some districts saw impromptu protests, people with homemade signs demanding transparency outside state houses in Utah, Missouri, and Pennsylvania, but the pushback wasn't one-sided. In Birmingham, a pro-Trump rally formed outside a local news station after it aired the memo headline. A woman in a sequined flag blouse shouted into a bullhorn, "This is what they do when they can't beat 'em at the polls. They attack the family across town." 30 minutes later, a college group held a silent march, holding signs that read "Truth over image" and "We deserve honest leaders." In coffee shops, classrooms, job sites, and buses, people picked sides. Meanwhile, in Gary, Indiana, a single mom named Patrice Kinley sat on the couch with her 15-year-old daughter, both watching the news like it was unfolding in their living room. "Why didn't he just take the test?" her daughter asked softly. Patrice shook her head. "Baby, when people lie long enough, even the truth starts feeling like a threat." In Philadelphia College, Professor Hugo Brenn held an open forum in his American ethics class. He wrote one question on the board: "Does personal truth matter in public service?" What followed was 3 hours of the most raw, honest conversation he'd seen in years. One student wept, another stormed out. Crockett, meanwhile, hadn't spoken since the call from Judge Vitarelli. She was preparing, not just legally, emotionally, because this wasn't just a political revelation. This was about how America sees its leaders, and whether that vision was ever real to begin with. At a town hall in Bakersfield, California, Representative Lynette O'Connor faced her own firestorm. Conservative voters stood up and shouted, "You people are tearing this country apart with gossip." She didn't yell back, she just asked the question, "Is it gossip if it's documented in a court file?" He didn't answer. Even international media picked up the story. A British anchor called it the most consequential question of paternity since Jefferson. In Canada, late-night comedians walked a delicate line between satire and awe, and in Brazil, one anchor simply said, "In America, power fears truth more than defeat." But back in Washington, something else was shifting. Polling numbers, a new survey showed Crockett's favorability had jumped 18 points among independents, especially those under 40. Trump's base remained strong, but undecided voters were drifting toward what they now called the honesty faction. And while Crockett didn't hold a press conference, her team confirmed one thing to the Day. Columbus Herald Judge Vitari's envelope was now in there possession. On social media, the reaction was instant. "She's not done. She's just loading the next shot in a Facebook group of political science majors." One comment stood out. "Crockett's not taking him down with noise, she's taking him down with documentation." But it wasn't just about Trump anymore. It was about how America as a country responds when the truth is no longer whispered, but read out loud with receipts. And while the nation stayed glued to their screens, Crockett's final move was getting ready. "I meant to close the chapter with clarity and leave no room for interpretation." It was just after 3 p.m. when Jasmine Crockett stepped out of a silver sedan and walked toward the press briefing podium outside the Capitol building. No TV crews had been tipped off. There were no barricades or media wristbands. Just a few dozen reporters who had started waiting early based on a single rumor she's going to speak. She didn't bring aides, no sunglasses, no lawyer beside her, just the same manila folder everyone had seen her carry into the building that morning. When she stepped behind the mic, the noise stopped. "My name is Jasmine Crockett," she said, "and I'm not here to repeat myself. I'm here to end the guessing." She pulled a single page from the folder and held it up. This is the original 2019. DNA test order filed under seal, issued by a state court, never fulfilled, never challenged in open. Court only buried, cameras clicked, reporters strained forward. What you've heard these past days is not theory, it's not drama, it's not political theater, it's a record, one that the American people should have seen. Years ago, someone called out, "Congresswoman, are you releasing the full affidavit?" She paused. "I'm handing it over to the House Ethics Committee, the DOJ, and the Public Record Office. I will not redact it. I will not hide behind legal games." Another reporter asked, "Are you concerned this will backfire politically?" She gave the faintest smile. "Truth doesn't backfire. It just burns where it needs to." The room went quiet again that evening. The files were published in full by multiple outlets. No paywall, no spin, just documents: the NDA, the DNA test request, the missed court appearances, the financial settlement history, and the internal memo confirming that the Trump legal team advised avoidance at all costs. It was undeniable. Now, he didn't just hide it, he buried it under influence and money that night. CNN aired a primetime segment titled "The Truth Test." What Crockett's files reveal about power and protection. MSNBC followed with "The Price of Image: How Silence Served the Presidency." Even Fox News, pressured by internal leaks, hosted a reluctant debate over whether Trump's denials could be trusted any longer. And across the country, the impact ran deeper than clicks. In Lincoln, Nebraska, a middle school civics teacher rewrote his lesson plan after a student asked, "Can a president lie and still be a good leader?" In Las Vegas, a Republican councilwoman announced she was stepping down from a campaign committee, saying, "I can't ask others to support a man who ran from a test my husband would have taken without blinking in." Baltimore Genevieve Larkinson finally spoke. She released a 2-page letter to the press. No cameras, no interviews, just words: "I didn't ask for this spotlight, but I'm not ashamed anymore. I kept quiet because I thought silence would protect my son, but I've learned that silence only protects the wrong people. I thank Congresswoman Crockett for doing what I could." Not her son, now in college, issued his own short statement: "My mom told the truth. That's all that matters." And still, Jasmine didn't grandstand. She didn't launch a book deal. She didn't ride the wave. She returned to work. She introduced 2 new bills in the House within a week: one to limit executive interference in state-level court cases, and another to create legal pathways for revisiting sealed settlements involving public officials. Neither passed immediately, but they were filed in ink and daylight, and for many Americans that meant something. For Trump, the damage was permanent. His legal team scrambled to spin it, but donors pulled back, independent voters walked away, even some of his former inner circle, like Sinclair and Halford, began cooperating with oversight committees. Privately, one senior aide was heard saying it wasn't Crockett who did this to him, he did it to himself. She just told the story he tried to erase, and as for Crockett, she never said "I told you so." She just kept showing up because that was the point all along. This wasn't about proving someone was a liar. It was about proving that even in the most protected halls of power, truth could still get through if someone was brave enough to stand still while the world shook. And as the camera faded from her final press appearance, her words stayed behind: "Your image is what you show, your truth is what you live with, and I didn't come to Congress to guard images, I came to honor the truth." If this story meant something to you, if it made you think, reflect, or even reconsider, subscribe for more of the stories we tell shape the world we live in. Let's tell the right ones.